Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me. I hope you had a good lunch. Um, I'm here to talk about what it really takes to get the bots into the wild. And thanks for the intro. So she mentioned that I'm coming from a regulated industry, media, and coming from one of the leaders in the media industry, which is the Globe and Mail. I'm gonna talk about my personal experience developing and deploying, productionalizing a RAG chatbot. And to just emphasize how important it is, before just going to the slides, I want to understand, like from the audience standpoint, how many of you can you explain, like by the show of hands, how many of you can say you have been exposed or learned or read a piece of article in the past week? Any sort of article, any sort of political, Middle East, Bitcoin, anything. Okay, I see most of the hands are on. And then the next question is that how many of you, when reading that article, you went from A to Z, from the very beginning to the very end, or you just jumped over different paragraphs? Is it really the case? By the show of hands, did you really read from the very first word to the very last word, or you just went through paragraphs or skipped some paragraphs? Okay, I see no hands on, only a few, yeah. That's good, that's good. And it's completely normal that we are living in a very busy world. We are being bombarded with so many news, mostly important news that we should be up to date with, and we cannot keep up to date with all the news out there. So we need to have a digestible format of the news. And what digestible format means here is that a short form of response that gives us the gist of the news. And that's what exactly we did in the Globe and Mail by introducing a RAG chatbot. So for those who are not quite familiar with the products of the Globe and Mail, and they only think like the Globe and Mail is a print media industry, I'm gonna walk you through what the Globe and Mail is all about, a quick fact, fun fact about the Globe and Mail. And then this will set up a stage for talking about the use cases that we are developing. I'm gonna specifically talk about a use case called Climate Bot, but that bot is a RAG chat bot, and we can deploy it in multiple sections of our website. So it's been built to be scalable. We're gonna switch our conversation to the architectural overview, deployment infrastructure, the user interface, and the considerations that we had because of the very constrained like media industry. We are impacting millions of people, so trustworthy and responsible AI is really a thing in the media industry. We're gonna cover that, and then switching to the monitoring and metrics, lesson learned, and I'm gonna wrap up with the final thoughts for those folks that are wondering like what would be the real user journey takeaways from the words of the mouth of the person that really deployed it in a regularized industry. So without further ado, I'm gonna switch to the Globe and Mail. Just fun fact. It was founded in 1844, and it's, of course, one of the Canada's oldest and most influential newspapers. So we are talking about a company that its print edition still reaches over 1 million readers weekly, and we have never been like standing still and being reactive to the user's needs. We have always been proactive. So from 1995, when the Globe's digital newspaper began, we have always tried to introduce innovation in different parts of the website. For example, like by the emergence of recommender systems, even before NLP, after in 2015 with NLP, we introduced like the paywall product, which could, we were hiring the traditional machine learning algorithms to decide which articles need to be paywalled, so we should not show them for free, and which articles are free for users to read. So those sort of strategic planning for that will really have an impact for the Globe and Mail. We were all doing it with the emergence of NLP and before the emergence of GenAI. And all of you can imagine, like as a media industry working with so many textual data, and that textual data has been produced over years, decades, and I can say like hundreds years It has reached to the attention of the large audience, and it is a source of truth for many, many Canadians and even international readers. So the Globe and Mail has built a deep legacy. And you can imagine, like the emergence of GenAI would introduce so much significance into the implications that we can introduce to the Globe and Mail. So we are talking about the digital platform of the Globe and Mail, like in the left-hand side. You can see that the digital platform today is reaching more than 6.7 thousand million unique monthly visitors, and most of its subscription are coming from digital channels. So we are already transitioning from the print to the digital. It's a transition that cannot be denied. And now we are transitioning from long articles to the newer ways of engaging with the users. Instead of just searching keywords and going to the website, passively reading the article, now you can ask questions and have a short summarized in bullet points in the way that you like the digestible format to be given to you. We are working on use cases to provide that capabilities. So with that initiative in mind, we started our acceleration plan. We sat down with our editorial journalists and we identified the opportunities that we can introduce innovation and make our product more accessible to all the users that are reading. And then, like we are living in a world of Instagram, TikTok, swipes, 15-second videos, notifications. We are bombarded with so many short, small pieces of news. And if we don't change the way that we are giving our audience those pieces of articles, we're gonna be like behind. And I'm very happy that the Globe and Mail is really, really transformational in this domain. Taking some risk, identifying the use cases, and then based on the feasibility and effort, we are prioritizing those use cases and then planning for development. And the plan for the development, because it is relied on the years of deploying GenAI, the AI, traditional AI, and now recently GenAI, we are not just rushing into productionalization, we are planning beforehand, like identifying the opportunities, shortlisting, validating ROI, and then development. And so you can think of these use cases to be very comprehensively reviewed before giving a go-ahead to go on the development. But one of the use cases that specifically I'm going to target for this presentation that has made its way toward production was climate chatbot. The climate chatbot, you can think of it as a topic-based chatbot that uses LLM to respond to users' personal questions. In the climate section, it can refer to as climate chatbot. In the personal finance, it can answer your personal questions. So all in all, this is an infrastructure that can answer users' questions in different sections. And you might be wondering, like with the emergence of GenAI, LLM, ChatGPT is almost free for users. Why should I ask my questions on a media platform other than asking it from ChatGPT? And the answer is so simple. I'm gonna ask you a question. Do you trust ChatGPT recommendations if you ask it, like I have a $20,000 and I wanna invest, and it tells you, just invest on Bitcoin. Will you do that? Will you trust that recommendation? Of course not. It might be hallucination. So many factors could be impacting that result. So having a chatbot that is supported by decades of trustworthy news articles is really something different than the other counterparts of the LLMs. So this is like great example of how we can combine AI and editorial depth, trustworthy, that we have introduced over decades, to especially have high impact on climate areas, on personal finance, on politics, and the list goes on and on. So switching our attention from the climate perspective, and deploying a climate chatbot in a regulated industry is not just as easy as asking a question from the user standpoint, asking a question and then providing the answer. It has more layers into it. And what I mean by that is that the RAG chatbot should be deployed across different sections, and it should not only provide an answer, but also it should be accurate. We should minimize the hallucination. I was talking about millions of users interacting with our platform. So if we make a mistake, if the answer is hallucinated, then the aftermath could be so bad. People are very good at taking snapshots, tweeting about, let's see what the glitch I have found about the LLMs. So we should be super accurate because we are one of the leading national media agencies, and then the tone should be aligned with the journalistically curated tone. It should satisfy our journalists that down there that they're saying, okay, you have a use case of GenAI, it is answering users' question, but the tone is too informal. It is not as if a journalist from the Globe and Mail is answering those questions. So those are the considerations and the guardrails that we should follow. In other ways, we should ensure that the interface is user-friendly, intuitive, and engaging for the users, so the engagement will not drop after we introduce the new feature. Especially as a beginning of introducing a GenAI application, it's super critical for showing to the management team that, let's see, we have built an LLM platform, LLM application. This is our first LLM application, and it is showing that the user engagement is increasing. So those few initial use cases, if succeed, they can show, we can convince the upper management team that, see, there is benefit in doing this and we can scale. So what we did to have a very planned strategic way to productionalize it is that we didn't rush into productionalization. We first sent our users, we posted a web form on our website, and we asked our users that, what do you want to know about climate? And this can be, again, scaled to different sections. What do you want to know about politics? What are you most interested about? Having this web form helped us in few ways. It could help us to identify what users we're really focused on. So at the end of the day, when we are introducing a new application, a RAG chatbot, we ensure that it's meeting the user's needs and it's practical, users are engaging with it. We had a good data set, so we could pass it to the journalists and say, let's see, these are the questions being submitted from the users. We can answer these questions, we can vectorize them in a vector DB, and we can deploy a RAG chatbot to meet the user needs. And yeah, so we started step by step. We didn't go to generative chatbots in the first place. We started with exact match based, meaning that if the user's question was exactly one of the questions that was previously asked by another user, and it was the answer was journalistically curated by our editorial team, we will show that answer to the user. So exact match questions. Next, we switched to the similarity based. We stored all those questions already asked in a vector database. And once the new user's question is being submitted, we will calculate the cosine similarity of the user's question using 2, 3, 4 different embeddings and getting a majority voting. That is really this user's question similar to one of those previously submitted questions. If it is, then we can again show the response of that other question formerly asked and that the journalist curated the answer for. So it was safe for us to step by step introduce generative AI in our platform. Then we switch to the extractive model, meaning that our model, once it receives the question, it can go through the previously published Globe and Mail articles, and it can see which parts of the articles are good to answer users' question. And then it can curate the answer by just extracting that paragraph, those few sentences, and showing that to the user, maybe with a reference. And then later on, we said, okay, now that we are using the retrieval part, the extraction part, why not having generative AI to generate sort of answer and then have an A/B test between the generated answer from AI, from the LLM, versus what was being extracted from different parts of the paragraphs. So we could compare which one is more compelling to the end users, which one is engaging our users more. And that was in a pilot mode, was in the development. And then lastly, as the last milestone, we could introduce like the generative AI, the GenAI, like the RAG system curates the answer based on the referenced articles. It could provide references, headlines that has hyperlink. You can click on them and it has an image. So the users really find trust in the generated content by the LLM. So if you want to imagine like what our pipeline really looked like at inference, I can start from the left, from the user's question. Once the user question is submitted, this is a very general, high-level overview. But the flow begins with a user question, which is passed through the series of increasingly flexible checks. First, we perform an extracted match check. So if the user's question exactly matches one of the predefined QA pairs, we skip everything else and we return a trusted editorial response. And that's instantly, without even passing it to the LLM. Second, if there is no exact match, we use a climate question classifier to determine whether the query is really about question or is it a politics question. So if it's politics question, we will show a respectful, like, this is not a climate question, please ask a climate question answer. And we will not pass it to the LLM. It can save us cost, and also it can make the pipeline more fast. Third, for the climate-related questions, we run a semantic similarity, as I mentioned, doing the cosine similarity, and if it was a part of the users that was previously asked, we can retrieve the answer. Lastly, we will pass that question if it was climate question, we didn't have exact match, and it was not similar to one of the QA pairs before, we will pass it to the LLM, and we will have, in the next slide, I'll show you, like, even inside that retrieval LLM, it's not as simple as just passing the question and having a response. Inside our main LLM, we are checking if the answer generated is relevant. So if it is not relevant, we will pass the template response. We will not pass the actual LLM generated response. We will check if there is a name entity or there is a specific entity that is forbidden to be part of the answer. We're going to check. Those are the guidelines. If it's going to include some of the specific names or entities, we're going to not allow the response to be generated. And then we'll do the hallucination check. We're going to ensure that the response generated is not hallucinated. Again, some final self-checks in terms of accuracy, tone, being really relevant to the user's question. And then if all those checks were passed, then we'll show the user the final response. In terms of the deployment infrastructure, this diagram shows like the end-to-end infrastructure that we have built to support the climate bot in production. The design is in a way that we can reproduce very easily for different sections. It's not specific to the one climate section. So even if there is an election, if there is a specific events, we can fine-tune our pipeline for that specific event so users could submit their questions and get a personalized answer based on the question. So I can start from the left bottom side. Our pipeline starts with the CI/CD pipeline. On the left bottom, we start with our GitHub repository where our Python code is existing. So as soon as a code change is pushed into GitHub, it triggers AWS code pipeline, which builds the Docker image on our Amazon ECR. So the image is then deployed to the ECS cluster. And in terms of inference layer, our inference path is receiving the incoming API request and then routed to the load balancer, which directs the traffic onto the ECS cluster. Then the ECS cluster spins up the ECS containers running our chatbot. And for our chatbot to be up to date, like the retrieval parts to be up to date, it needs to have access to what is our current climate corpus. So what we have stored in that S3 bucket is the climate corpus that is getting updated daily. You can think of it if we are in the middle of election and there are new election articles being posted by the Globe and Mail journalists. We can update those articles daily or even hourly. So our RAG chatbot is up to date and it can respond to the user's questions by having the up-to-date knowledge. As you all know, logging is super important in such systems. For the LLM chatbots to generate a response that will be delivered to the millions of users, we want to store the user's question, the classification, if it was climate or not, if it was NER, hallucinated, the rate of hallucination. These are all the different metrics that we're storing. As well as the response generated, we are storing that in Amazon DynamoDB table in order to show to the journalist that how many of the users were left unanswered, and then we can bring human in the loop. We can minimize the number of unanswered questions and be as transparent as possible. Like if the hallucination rate is high, we can tackle the hallucination. And of course, these RAG chatbots are not going to succeed unless they are user-friendly and the users really want to engage with the RAG chatbot. So once our core model was in place, we shifted our focus to designing a UI that would seamlessly adapt to different types of the responses from the API. Whether the output is an extracted page, like the passage, or the different parts of the paragraph, we want it to be flexible. Maybe the response is just as simple as a question is being asked, and that journalist previously has answered that question. So we would show the exact curated, journalistically curated response. However, in other terms, it can get more complicated when we are having generated responses. You'll see that on the right-hand side, there are some samples that a climate question has been asked, and we somehow try to generate a response related to the user's question, but at the same time, we are providing references for the user to also check. And we had some iterations of optimizing our UI, like the removing the empty spaces, transforming from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. You see, after some iterations, we could introduce some new ways that users could grab the response in just one snapshot, and the headline is on the left. That is hyperlinked, so they can click and verify the information that is being shown to them. But as an ML engineer on this project, I worked closely to design and product to make sure that the API was flexible and response ready. So meaning that we structured the output in a way that supports dynamic content rendering, controlled hallucination risk, and kept the experience aligned with the Globe's editorial voice. And actually, once the chatbot was live, we focused heavily on monitoring the performance and engagement. In the Globe and Mail, mostly the engagement is being captured by the number of page views, for the chatbots, number of questions being asked, number of questions that left unanswered, the daily and hourly rate of submission of those questions. So those are all the charts that we are showing, we are actively monitoring. And you can see when there was a wildfire going on, the rate of the question being asked from our climate chatbot increased. On the left-hand side, you will see the number of page views and the questions submitted. And on the right-hand side, that's really transparently showing how much we could bring engagement higher by introducing this climate chatbot. The green line is showing that how many minutes, in terms of minutes, how many minutes the users are spending time on the Globe and Mail website. So it's around 2 minutes on average daily. Versus the blue line is only the climate exchange time spent. So the users that are engaging with the climate RAG chatbot are spending almost 6 minutes on the page, meaning that in terms of the time spent, we are increasing the engagement threefold. Also, in terms of the page views and click bottoms, we are having different diagrams, and we're actively looking into if our platform is responsive and everything is good. So as I wanted to wrap up my presentation, I wanted to share a few key lessons that came across. Some are specific to our project and some are broadly applicable across industries. First, I learned that the value of starting with a simple layered approach is so much important, and by gradually escalating from exact match to retrieval LLM and then introducing generative AI, we reduced the complexity early on and scaled safely. Second, we found that editorial guardrails are essential. In the newsroom, our CEO, I was listening to what our CEO was saying the other day, and he was mentioning the trust is our currency. So what makes people to engage with the Global Mail rather than ChatGPT is trust, is the credibility. And really, we wanted to have we wanted to maintain that trust. So that's why I'm saying the editorial guardrails, although they were they were imposing some delays to the pipeline, but accuracy and tone weren't just nice to haves, they were must-haves in our core requirements. So the safe checks were necessary, and without them, we couldn't even develop or productionalize anything. And also, I realized that the monitoring wasn't an option. Metrics helped us catch up the user patterns, validate if there was hallucination, we could handle them early on. And RAG really is helping us to have a short form of the answer to the user's question. And users are finding it very, very practical. They do not want to spend so much time reading an article and looking for some piece of information. Instead, they might engage more. We just saw that they are engaging in terms of the minutes, and they're engaging more in terms of minutes, but they're finding it much more easy to interact with. And no product is complete without a complete UX design. So UX is always the bridge to have a impactful touch on the users. My final thoughts to close things out, I want to leave you with a few reflections from this project. First is that readers really want answers, not traditionally curated articles. As we just, in the beginning of my talk, we just, by the show of hands, we just saw that everyone is imposed to the news, everyone is excited to follow the news, but we want short form of the answers. And today's users often do not have time or patience to scroll through a full article. They're just looking for fast, focused answers. And our chatbots bridge that gap without sacrificing editorial integrity. And trust is built through transparency. So with hallucinations, it's still a known issue in LLMs. It's critical that every answer be grounded and trusted content. So we prioritize this at every layer of our stack. And we should admit that GenAI is powerful but not magical. We should understand that hallucination, not having a hallucination is not guaranteed. Even in the regulated industries, even millions of users might be facing that. We cannot guarantee that no hallucination is there. That was main points that I wanted to cover, and I'm happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. Thank you.
Question. I noticed you were using the curated answers. Were you also using Globe and Mail's content about articles or not? And if not, then why?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of the response, it's either coming from the specifically curated editorial, the Globe and Mail editorial answer, as we saw. If not, if it's not part of the questions and answers that our journalists have curated specifically to that topic, our chatbot is going again to the Globe and Mail corpus, not external corpuses. So it will go to the Globe and Mail previously published articles, and it will try to retrieve in terms of the semantic similarity, retrieve the best suitable answer for that question.
Okay, just because I tried you and they didn't get all my questions, just so you know, you'll see in the testing results.
Yeah.
Sorry, just one last question.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Two quick questions on how do you test for exact match and how do you test for hallucination? Did you use an LLM or soft sorts?
Yeah, for the hallucination, I'm going to start from your second question. For the hallucination, we're doing two things. One, human in the loop. We're always capturing what LLM tagged as hallucination, and we are passing that to our journalist. That is it really a hallucination, and why this answer was generated. So human in the loop is always part of the story. And on the other question about, could you repeat like your? Okay, exact match queries. We are doing like exact string matching without any punctuation. So we are limiting our model to tolerate some sort of not exact match, like as long as it's 95%, 99% similar in terms of the string matching. With our backend, we are tolerating that much of the violation.